because he recently was in the news saying that the SEC is telling him to delist all these other cryptocurrencies except Bitcoin. And he was as quoted as saying that would essentially mean the end of the crypto industry in the US. So what's your response to Brian Armstrong?
Right. Well, there's always been a few schools in Bitcoin, right? And Brian Armstrong would fall into the category of, let's say, Silicon Valley startup who sees Bitcoin as a means to an end, and that is to do some venture capital, to go public, to make a lot of money. And so he never really said anything that would stand out as being particularly appreciative of Bitcoin as the perfect money, beautiful architecture that it is. We had during the fork wars of 2017, you had the New York Agreement, and you had, oh man, I think it was up to 20 companies really that showed their hand that they were looking to control Bitcoin purely for commercial purposes to better their financing needs and to just go down the typical path of a Silicon Valley startup and showed no appreciation for the protocol and the underlying aesthetic at all. In my case, I had the experience back in the 1990s of actually, I have a patent on virtual currencies. I can claim rightfully to be the inventor of virtual currencies. I have the only patent on a virtual currency, virtual market making, and virtual securities that goes back to 1996. And that was born out of my experience on Wall Street in the 1980s. And what attracted me to Wall Street in the 1980s, aside from the obvious remuneration possibilities, was just I loved the mechanics of it and the market making in particular and price discovery. Price discovery is a topic that I can talk endlessly about. And with Bitcoin, it's kind of the end of price discovery because everything will be priced in Bitcoin eventually. Everything goes to zero against Bitcoin. And so for someone like myself who's been following this for 40 years, finance, markets, technology, Bitcoin is the holy grail. It's the end all. I would say that my compatriot in all of this would be Michael Saylor, who really, when you hear Michael Saylor talk, he talks about the aesthetics of Bitcoin, the beauty of Bitcoin. And he speaks about it in a way that I think carries the torch from the Max and Stacy from 2011. He started buying it, I guess, when it was 10,000 or 12,000 or so in the 2020 era. So we were there from 2011 to 2020. I think he's kind of carried the torch from 2020 in a lot of ways, and introduced Bitcoin to massive pools of capital. I'm surprised that more companies haven't followed his lead, given the outbreak in inflation that we've had, exactly as he predicted it. The melting ice cube, as he called it at that time, is exactly what happened. And I'm surprised more companies. Although I guess we could say now we are in an era where BlackRock and these other major institutions are now finally looking at Bitcoin. So his work on the institutional level, I guess, is bearing fruit now, 3 years later. And I see in the Middle East, they're starting to recognize Bitcoin. And so that's a huge pool of capital. I think all that oil money, when it finds its way into Bitcoin, will be a huge catalyst for higher prices. It's a natural way for the oil industry to diversify their portfolio and to because Bitcoin essentially is energy, and I think energy eventually gets priced in Bitcoin, and there's a marriage between these two in a big way. So I think that's the kind of the answer. Is I've always been fascinated by price discovery in markets and kind of the architecture of markets and how markets work under the hood. And Bitcoin is just such a it's a pristine, perfect money, and I think it's something that humans have been searching for since forever. And now we're seeing it change society on really a fundamental level with the introduction of Bitcoin. It's a lot of people are freaking out because of it because it destroys the status quo, and a lot of people who were kind of waiting for it to come along, who had the faith, that humanity could be saved, they see Bitcoin in those terms. So you have this split going on, which is very exciting. And so it just continues on and on. How could you not be interested in it? How could you? I think the people who were into it earlier and walked away just never got it from the beginning. So, like, let's say a Roger Ver, for example, who was early, came in at about the same time as we did. He just, I don't think he ever really got it on that level. He just kind of saw it as a means to an end and did other projects. And I think that's true for a lot of people. There's very few, there are a few that really have been in it for this long and kind of see it in those terms. And every day there's more coming in. So certainly with El Salvador, we've had a chance to orange pill a nation, and we've been on the ground for almost 2 years. The president is completely on board. He was tweeting about Bitcoin years ago, um, and he completely gets it. And so it's having a huge impact on El Salvador in a big way.